Jim Larrañaga is stepping down. He's calling it a career, and like everybody else, he's blaming NIL. I don't. In terms of the job itself, how good of a job is it, Rob?
In terms of Miami, oh
Yeah.
man, like it's so hard to evaluate what a good job is in college basketball right now because like how much of it depends on what you're able to bring in terms of NIL and what you're able to pay players, right? Like in a vacuum, I think Miami's probably like a top quarter job, maybe a top half job in the ACC, right? Somewhere in that range. Because it is South Florida and you can recruit to warm weather. And I'm sure that there's a lot of things that you're able to do outside of simply being a student athlete that would be quite enjoyable for somebody to want to go play there. But at the same time, like, I think that there is probably a reason why the Boozer twins, if you talk to most people like in the recruiting circles, it felt like they were a significantly heavy lean towards Miami until the last second. And it makes you wonder, like, what happened there that made them decide to go elsewhere, right? Was it a monetary thing? And I get a little bit annoyed by the way that people have kind of reacted to this, the Jim Larrañaga retirement, right? Like, I don't understand why the entire pushback has been he's quitting on his team. Like, if this was a player, we'd be absolutely skewering him. Like, this might honestly be the best thing for some of those guys on that roster, right? Like, if Jim Larrañaga is 75 years old and he's exhausted, like he said he was, and he's at the point where he doesn't feel like he can do this anymore, and they've had a disastrous start to the year. Like, what are they, 4-8? Lost 8 of the last 9. They just lost to Mount St. Mary's at home. Like, if he's at the point where he can't do this and doesn't want to do this, and it's a negative for his roster, isn't the right thing to do to quit and to walk away? Because all of these guys, like, let's call it what it is. They might be making a couple $100,000 right now. Some of the best players on that team, maybe more. That's not life-changing money. That's not like you're good, you're set for life money, right? All of these guys are going to have to get jobs somewhere afterwards. And I'm sure the majority of them would like to be able to do that playing maybe in the NBA, maybe in a high level professionally overseas, right? Maybe in a place where you can make 7 figures on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Maybe if you're end up with a G League, 2A, whatever it is, you got to find a way to be able to make a living in basketball. And no one's going to look at teams that are 4-8 and say, hey, we got to get all of these guys on our roster. We got to find a way to be able to get these guys into our franchise and into our organization. So if Jim Larrañaga is not bought in, the best thing for the players is to walk away and let somebody that actually loves what they're doing and wants to do it every single day when they wake up, go in there and take over the program. Like, he's 75 years old, man. It's a different era. You know, it sucks that it drove the likes of Tony Bennett and the likes of Coach K and the likes of Roy Williams and some of these all-time greats out of the sport. But, you know, he's 75. He was going to retire pretty soon anyway. Like, what are we even talking about here? I just, the way that narrative kind of popped up really frustrated me.
Sweeney, in terms of what's next for that job, who makes sense? Is there a candidate or 2 or 3 that makes sense that you might look at?
Yeah, look, it's going to be coveted, if nothing else, because you get an opportunity to get paid $3 million a year to live in Miami. Like that's a pretty darn good selling point. I think names to watch. Richard Pitino is one name I would circle. Obviously, it's had success in New Mexico. The Pitino family has a lot of ties down in South Florida. Richard had been in the state of Florida when he was with Billy Donovan at Florida. There's enough connections there that he makes a lot of sense. Will Wade would be someone that I would be interested in if he's interested in making the move back up from McNeese to a higher level. That's someone I would dig into, because if I know, if nothing else, like, we're going to get players right away and have an opportunity to win early. And in an ACC where there's been so much turnover, I would feel good that if I hire Will Wade, I can be in the mix to make the tournament in year 1. And then there's a ton of really good mid-major coaches out there in the South. Bob Ritchie and Bucky McMillan in the SoCon. Alan Huss at High Point has done a phenomenal job. You could look at Ryan Odom, who's been really, really good at VCU. If George Washington continues to have success this year, Chris Caputo, who was a former assistant of Larrañaga, maybe he's in the conversation. So, there no shortage of suitors. People will want this thing, and I don't know that they can pull a sitting high major coach, but they could certainly get one of the best mid-major names on the market.
Rob, did you have a thought on that just before we get to toast on who they should look at? Who they target?
Sweeney just kind of he got to all the names. I'm going to be very curious to see who ends up taking the dive on Will Wade, because there's no doubt in my mind that Will Wade is going to end up being like a very, very good high major head coach again one day. He's still like, what, 41 years old? Yeah, he's already been. He's 41 years old. He's had success everywhere he goes. And you know he's going to get players. You know he's going to turn your program. Like, look at what he's doing at McNeese State of all places, man. Like, he's just going to get dudes. He's going to put together a roster for you, and you're going to win right away. And it might come with some other stuff, but you know what? Sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's Miami. What are we talking about, man? It's Miami. Are they worried about baggage? I don't think that they are. Is something, have they all of a sudden become like this saintly, perfectly clean program in the last like 12 years? And I'm not just talking about basketball, right? We're talking about it. Didn't they have a whole Ponzi scheme?
Nevin Shapiro. Nevin Shapiro, man.
Like, he doesn't even need to be in the shadows anymore. We've had Nevin Shapiro. We've had John Ruiz.
Free Nevin Shapiro.
Man, what are we doing? What are we talking about here? You got to go get Will Wade.